Some of you can relate, I can tell. Anyway, we are winding down our sermon series on the book of Genesis. And I wanted to announce, this is for the first time that it's been announced, that our next sermon series, is going to be on the book of Hebrews. And I'm really excited about that. But if you want to start reading in it, go right ahead. Actually, I'm thinking about naming the series the Greg Jarrell Sermon Series. And you may be going, well, why is that? Well, the reason I might call it the Greg Jarrell Sermon Series is because he brews our coffee every Sunday. But I'm bummed. Okay. Anyway, a little shout out to Greg because he does do our coffee every Sunday, and we're very, very thankful for it. It's fine. Yes, thank you for that, Greg. And you may be the honorary name of my sermon series, so we'll see if it sticks. So anyway, all right, that's something to look forward to. But now let's get talking about Genesis. It is, if you've been here recently, anyway, hopefully you know that the attention in Genesis, so at this point, has been focused on a guy named Joseph, not the earthly father of Jesus, Joseph. That's another Joseph, pretty well known, but it's not him. It's the Joseph of the Old Testament that we've been hitting on, in this particular section. And at this point, we've seen him go through an awful lot, right? I mean, ups and downs. He was the favorite son of his father, Jacob, aka Israel, and he has been thrown into a pit by his brothers and was betrayed by them, ultimately sold into slavery. They got him down to Egypt, and when he was in Egypt, he got elevated into a great position under the leader of the Egyptian military. And then he was falsely accused, went back down again, falsely accused by his boss's wife that got him thrown into prison. And then in prison, he interpreted for some of the staff some dreams that got them to tell Pharaoh, the top guy, right, about interpreting the dreams, that Joseph was good at that. And so he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, and then he was made the number 2 most powerful person in the most powerful country in the world at the time, Egypt. So you see, I mean, just amazing ups and downs that he had, and an amazing story. And then last week, we came to the point where he was telling his brothers, he did tell his brothers, the ones who sold him into slavery, he told them that he was actually alive. They thought he was dead. They didn't know what had happened to him. They had not seen him in over 20 years. And so he told his brothers that who he was and that he was alive. And he was doing quite well. He was in this really powerful position. Now, to say that they were shocked and scared at the same time, that'd be an understatement. They were kind of mortified about it. Listen, Joseph held all the cards, right, and with his brothers, in fact, on how he would treat them. He could have played those cards any way he wanted to. And his brothers were completely at his mercy, right? They were like, oh my goodness, this whole thing is now really about to come to a head. But fortunately for them, mercy was the decision that Joseph chose. He had mercy on them. And not only did Joseph not retaliate, which would have been expected in a lot of circles, not only did he not retaliate, but he even refused to put any blame on them. I mean, it's really this amazing forgiveness that he had and stuff. In fact, he wanted to see them see that God had sent him to Egypt for a purpose, right? And this might sound too good to be true, but Joseph was totally convinced of the sovereignty of God, that he was in control. He trusted him. One of the things that I've been trying to talk about ever since the beginning of the year, and particularly emphasizing the trust that we have in God. Well, my goodness, look at Joseph. Going through all of that, he had this incredible trust that God was in control. I mean, that's really what you're trusting in, right? You're trusting that God is in control, that even in this circumstance that I find myself in, even in the situations that we find ourselves in, that God is in control. And Joseph was a guy who absolutely lived that as well as anybody, and probably in the history of the world. Check this out from Genesis 45. This is from last week. And he says, and he's talking to them, to his brothers. He says, and now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Isn't that incredible? I mean, just to be able to say that, much less believe that. But it was him. And what's interesting is Joseph actually uses two phrases that seem to contradict one another. If you really study this and look at it, he says, you sold me. And then he says, God sent me. Whoa, wait, time out. You sold me, but God sent me? No, which one is it? I mean, listen, it's the classic dilemma that believers oftentimes wrestle with how can God be sovereign and how can we have free will? Right? That's a question we all kind of wrestle with. I mean, at some point in our life, in our spiritual journey, it's a question that if you haven't wrestled with, I'm totally surprised if you've been a Christian for any length of time. Because it's a very important question. God is sovereign. He's in control. He's in control of everything. But we're not robots. We have a free will. We are able to make decisions, to choose things. I mean, Adam and Eve would have never eaten of the fruit, right? Eaten of that tree if they didn't have free will. So we know, I mean, it's there. It's always been there. And so, you know, it's very perplexing when you see that. But here's the thing, and I'm just going to give you the short answer, okay? The short answer is that God is so far beyond our ability to comprehend him that there are mysteries that we will never fully understand. And until you start realizing that your God is that big, that you say, you could have like super and high IQ. You can be super, super smart. I mean, the smartest person, there are still things. I mean, the distance between the intellect of us and God, think of it this way. Lenora was in here. She's a beautiful little, she's about to turn 1. And she was in here a little bit ago, and I miss her. She's not around. No, I'm just kidding. She's now over with the big kids. But listen, the distance between her intellect and her mom's intellect, how big is that? Huge, right? It's a fraction of the distance between our intellect and God's intellect. That's what you have to realize. See, the more you mature in your faith, what should happen is God gets much, much bigger. And you think as you grow in your faith and mature in your faith, you're getting closer to him. Well, yes and no. What we realize is that when we are early in our faith and stuff, God's kind of about this big, right? And we know that we're this far away. But as we start getting closer to him, what happens? He gets bigger and bigger, which makes it really a little further away. So there are these mysteries that happens, and that's why Joseph can say that you sold me, God sent me. They're both true. They're both true. We have to realize that we're worshiping a God that is that big, right? That he is so big that he is able to control things while giving us free will. Now, listen, in the case of Joseph, that in no way diminishes their responsibility for what they did. They're responsible for it. But at the same time, in no way was God ever out of control. He was always in control of his divine plan. There's a famous quote by the founder of the Salvation Army, a guy named General William Booth back in England. A lot of destitute people around and stuff, but he had this quote that I picked up that I love. He said, this is the way we should approach things. Work as if everything depended on your work, and pray as if everything depended upon your prayer. Both things are true. Work and pray, okay? Now, the brothers experienced the grace of God through Joseph forgiving them and then rejoicing with them. I don't think there's a better example in the entire Bible of God's sovereignty and mankind's free will. After a vast array of seemingly accidental and unrelated events that mostly seemed ugly and difficult at the time, they were gradually woven together. God had woven them together by his unseen hand and into an amazing story of this beautiful plan that he had. To believers going through difficult times and trying circumstances, that might be you at this point, I hope that you lean into the story of Joseph. I hope it's something you can lean into and go, wow, he trusted even in the worst of times in his life. And I need to trust in the worst of times in my life. I need to realize that God is still in control, even though I do have free will and choice. And that's, I think, a huge story, a huge lesson from this story. And we're not done yet. So if you have the Bible, we're going to pick up where we left off last week in chapter 45. And this is Joseph speaking. And he says this: "Now hurry back to my father," again talking to his brothers. "Now hurry back to your father and say to him, your son Joseph is alive. And he said to tell you, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me, you, your children, your grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and the best of all Egypt will be yours." So Joseph set aside this region of Goshen, which back then at that point in time was not well inhabited. It also was a place with a lot of fields and an area to be able to have their flocks of their herds that they had. And so they could live there during the 5 years, right, that's remaining of the famine. Now, it's interesting that the story of the beginning of God's people comes back at the end of Genesis, and that the sons of Israel would have been provided for in Goshen. It says, the best of all of Egypt will be yours. Very similar to the very beginning of Genesis when it was said that the good land, the Garden of Eden, was given to Adam. Now, this isn't the Garden of Eden, but it's very interesting because there's been a few thousand years of wandering around, going through the flood, doing all that kind of stuff, and here God, through Pharaoh, provides an abundant land in the middle of a famine for his people. Isn't that great? I mean, it's just this picture of Joseph is a picture of restoration, and it will set the stage for what is to come later in Exodus and then in Joshua, because again, spoiler alert, we're not going to get to it in Genesis, but they become slaves in Egypt, and then of course there is the miraculous parting of the Red Sea for their departure from that. But anyway, all that is being set up, but it's being set up for that event, those events to take place right here at this point in time. Okay, let's keep moving. Verse 25, we're going to jump down a little bit. "So they went up out of Egypt and came to their father Joseph in the land of Canaan. They told him, Joseph is still alive." It's just like they go up there and blurt it out, like, "Hey, Joseph is still alive." Now, I love the fact, it's very questionable to me. It's like, didn't he look at them and go, "Well, I thought you said they got killed. What's the deal with that story?" They don't revisit it at all. They just say Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is the ruler of all Egypt. Jacob, of course, was what? Stunned, and he didn't believe them. But when they told him everything that Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts Joseph had sent, by the way, the Pharaoh had given them all this carts and everything to take up there, all the animals to move them and everything else. He had like all the moving trucks you could possibly coming up there. Those revived and see him. He heard all of Israel. Now, there is Israel, and that in his spiritual. If you would see, as you would see, the stock market, right? At times we're faith, and so turn back to God, our faith in through straight line, our faith journey. All that He's Israel, and it says this. So Israel rises to God, and God spoke. It'd be great, right? Again, I'm not you're following you back. Your eyes kind of break some. Jacob was in a hurry, right? He still took stress God first, right? We don't have. And here's one of the a lot. It's on are tuned in. Are you listening? Those listening skills. Now, kind of a plan was to build, to go way back. They were, and now the promised land that he was already in is where they were. And so he's saying, wait, so now Jacob, where I go, I mean, I've been taught me to go to him. Listen, and ways are not our ways. And it's got to be God's plan. Israel to go. Now, it says something very interesting. It's go. But God tells Israel, I love this, but God's plan more polytheistic, and however, and they were even less tempted. The Egyptians, by and large, that they were interested in evil of the way, listen, how, and he was a very godly and transport them. So brought with him. So just as 12, Egypt, not really to them. Okay, Egypt now, and so if you like, was 70. 70 in Babylon. Like the number is significant. So we're not going to go through all 7. Goshen, since I have seen joy, and his dad definitely the most. I could die happy and peace. They're shut over there. Pharaoh was pretty. Joseph's plan is that, and some of his brothers had. Pharaoh said that Joseph's plan was success. He prospered. Verse 7. When Jacob hears 70, quite a meeting, right? You've got the him. I don't know if he said there. God, he wanted to write unmoved down Jacob and he'll mentor. It feel good. I've seen Jacob's family. Pickens chapter 1, the faith. That praise God for lecture. If that you don't remember it, you can do all kinds of these too busy to help it. We are.